All righty, we're going to get started here. We're in the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. It's May 15th. And first we get started with the recognition of the traditional territories of the Comox peoples. Doesn't look like we have any delegations. So we'll just move into reports. Is that right? Second. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. So the rural community grant final review. So James,
Thank you. Yeah, so the directors will remember that this report was received at the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting a week ago. And the commitments that the committee made are noted on the spreadsheet that's attached, and we'll be able to walk through those on the screen. Kevin Duville, our manager of financial planning services, is here to introduce this report and then walk the committee through. So Kevin, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Through the acting CAO, through the chair to the directors, good afternoon. So yes, as the acting CAO alluded to, the EASC had deliberated on the 2023 Rural Community Grant applications at its last meeting on May the 8th. Staff are now bringing back the finalized spreadsheet for your reconsideration and endorsement. We've also brought forward a few additional items for your consideration in that vein, but maybe before I get into that, just to remind folks of where we were at. So we received total funding requests this year of $463,994. That was a total of about 43 applications overall. Total funds available through the 5 grant and aid or rural community grant services this year totaled $357,505. So that currently leaves, with the allocations made at last week's meeting, funds remaining of about $160,565. Just so you know, kind of what you have left to potentially expend, if any further applications come across through the remainder of the year. So as it was noted, we've identified all of the organizations who are slated to receive funding. Assuming those do get endorsed here today, we would put that forward to the board for formal adoption, and then we would notify all of those groups and look at disbursement prior to August 1st, unless there was any request for any kind of special advanced payments on those. The couple of items that we have indicated in the staff report, just to bring forward for your consideration. The rural directors may recall that at the prior board meeting on May the 9th, there was a delegation from the United Writers of Cumberland who presented to the board, and at that time had made a request for an additional $25,000 in funding support in 2023. That would be above the $25,000 that they're currently slated to receive through the recreational grant service, or function 600. What we're putting forward today is that's the rural directors could, if they so choose, propose to fund that additional request under the rural community grants, at least for this year, with subsequent years then to be reconsidered as part of the 2024 financial planning. Alternatively, that request could then be directly referred back to the Recreation Commission for consideration of being fully funded under the Recreation Grant Service, function 600. There was also a subsequent application received from the Lush Valley Food Action Society on May the 9th. They are seeking $15,000 to support the Solemn Commons Food Forest, which was formerly called the Vanya Education Garden. Just for information, Lush is already approved to receive $20,000 in operational grants in 2023 from the Admin and General Government Service, function 110. That is to support the administration and coordination of the Comox Valley Food Policy Council. And then lastly, the EA committee had endorsed a contribution to the Union Bay Historical Society from the Rural Community Grants in the total of $22,500. Just wanted to bring to your attention for your consideration that in 2023, there are actually is some capacity available within the various heritage conservation services. So for example, the Bain Sound, Dem and Hornby Islands, and the Bain Sound service has approximately $19,737 available in it, whereas the Lazo North Area B service and the Pontledge Black Creek service for Area C have $16,777 and $10,617 respectively available in 2023. These are largely the result of, coming out of COVID. We've had some budget carry forwards that just continue to roll over into those budgets. So this is somewhat unusual where we have this type of capacity available within those services. So that is a potential area where that could get shifted to if you wanted to maintain some additional dollars within your rural community grants. So just wanted to make the directors aware of that, and certainly we can walk through this and staff can answer any questions you may have.
Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kevin, for the report and the update. I would actually like to. I didn't realize there was that much left in the heritage function in Bain Sound, so I think I'd committed like 10 grand from the rural grant, but maybe we could swap that out, or 12,000 or something like that. Just swap the amount to come from the heritage function, and then I have a question about the United Cumberland. So the recreation grants, I don't think they've come before the Recreation Commission yet, have they?
No, they have not. So as I noted, as part of the adopted financial plan for 23-27, we already have their usual allocation of 25,000. They did just approach the board at the May 9th meeting, but no, they haven't made a formal request to the Rec Commission at this time.
So just to further, is that one of the groups then that we put on the multi-year funding agreement? When you say their usual 25,000, that would lead me to think they might be on a multi-year?
We are working towards that. Certainly in the rec grants, we haven't quite gotten to being able to present formalized multi-year agreements at this stage, but certainly given they have received that amount for at least the last few years for sure, and have been supported by that particular service for the past number of years, that definitely they could be considered for that. And as I said, there is some additional room in that service. We have about $12,000 in unallocated amount that could be allocated to that. We could also pull a little bit dollars out of reserves if the Recreation Commission were to so desire. But we wanted to, bring it forward here today just to provide a first opportunity to see if this was something the rural directors may want to consider as part of this process.
Thanks. So yeah, I would be willing. A lot of the trails are actually in Area A that get access to Cumberland. A lot of my residents use it as well. And now I also think that they're kind of a lot of things they're working on are quite good for the future in terms of the CBRD does not have an MOU with Mosaic, and I'm not sure I want one, but if we were to have one, a big incentive was to secure the trails and access to the trails. And so I'd be prepared to put in not a huge amount, but 2,500, and then seeing how the conversations go at the broader board, because ultimately I think you heard me at board that I think we should just fund that thing regionally, but not everybody shares that view. So in the meantime, I'm happy to throw in a little bit of rural funds in there.
Edwin.
Thanks very much. Well, I also agree because a lot of those trails are in Area C as well. So, and being that this is probably a one-off request by them, if they can get into a little more money from, even if they can get another 10 grand from whatever surplus is in function 600, I'm willing to put 12K in. Can we just keep going? You got any other ones you want to adjust? No? Okay. Well, as far as Lush goes, I'm good for 5K. The head injury, I want to bump it up to 1K. Anderton Gardens, 2K. Indigenous Women, 7K. Follow the money, folks, follow the money. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat-tat. Indigenous Women, 7K. Anderton Gardens, 2K. What are we at now with the Robinson Lake? Am I in for 2K on that? 2? Okay, I'll leave it there. Land Trust, 7K. Just double check. So 7K in the Land Trust and missed it, there you go. Where are we at on Couscous Sum right now? Miss it. Did you find Couscous Sum?
Yeah, you're currently at 2.
Where's it at?
They're up for 20 and they're up to 8.
Where are we at?
Right where at least
So
it's
we're
kind
at 2.
of circling
Okay.
area.
And they want 20.
They want 20. Currently, they've been allocated 8.
Okay, so if well, I'll match area B on that. So
So up 3 to 5.
5, yeah. And I think that's it because I got to keep my powder dry. There's a few requests I know are coming in still. Thanks.
Daniel, did you want to go next? Did you want to add anything else or are you good right now?
Yeah, just I'm good other than the discussion we had earlier. I don't know if it was reflected for the Union Bay Historical Society. I don't know if the adjustment was made on the sheet, but as long as it gets captured into the heritage function, so that doesn't get lost with no money.
Thank you. So we're, yeah, right at this point, we're removing the 12 from area A. That's going to get picked up by the Heritage Service instead. So that would give them then 12 from area A plus the additional amounts of basically cover the full balance. Unless the area B and C directors would also like to shift those over to the Heritage Conservation Services as well.
curious about that. Where does area B?
Correct. Yeah, so currently areas B has $16,777 in unallocated amounts in that service this year. And again, that's just the result of some prior year carry forwards over the last couple of years. So you could, instead of allocating 5,000 out of this budget, you could shift that over to your heritage.
I'd very much be interested in doing that as well.
Okay, great.
No.
What does C have?
And C has 10,617.
I'll shift it over.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, giving it a little bit more thought, I do have some areas that I would like to top up as well. So start with Couscous. I'll add an additional $1,000.
It's line 14. I believe, Comox Valley Project Watershed Society.
Then I'd like to move down to the Boys and Girls Club. We'll add 3,000. That should get us up there, right? How much more do we got left there? Sorry, I'm gonna squint. Is it 65 or 85?
Yeah, an additional 3 would put them at their full ask.
Okay, but yeah, that's
Right now they're at 6,000. That's what we.
so you still need 25. Let's increase it then. Let's get them up to the 6 to there we go.
Okay.
The lacrosse. Like to add 4,000 to that. Yeah. Then we got the Eureka. And we'll add another 4,000. And then the Indigenous women. And would like to add 5,000. Then we got Heart and Stroke. Like to contribute 1,000 to the Heart and Stroke. I should put a number behind it, sorry. Is that what it is? Stroke recovery? Yeah. 1,000. Actually, let's make it 1,600, and then that way they get.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then the Comox Bay Core Society. We'll do 2,000. Comox Bay Core Society. Yeah, let's do up to 5. And that's it.
You can increase my energy to be 1,000 too.
So Daniel, you wanted to make a motion in regards to make a larger contribution to UROC?
Vote on this. Vote on this. We did the Campbell River version. See.
Daniel?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'd propose 3 motions. One, to just adopt the amended report for the rural community grants. The second one would be to move the proposed UB Historical Society to the Heritage Function. Or should we wait for that, depending on staff? And then the third one would be for UROC. They're not listed, but that they just be added to the list for this one for 2,500.
And just to confirm, Director, so that would be 2,500 from Area A and 12,000 from Area C
Right. Yeah, that's right.
for UROC.
So can I actually just do one motion and then that directs, so move that we approve the amended rural community grants contributions with the addition of UROC as per the specified amounts.
And Lush too.
Is Lush not on this?
Directors haven't provided any direction at this point as to what you would like to do with Lush. Again, just to remind you, so the additional request, which is in that table, I believe, is for $15,000 to support the Solomon Commons Food Forest.
Yeah, it is. It is in the report.
Okay. So it looks like we have allocated 5 at this point from Area C.
So just to be clear, the recommendation or the resolution that you're suggesting would be to approve this table
Yes.
as it is, included in the UROC
Yes.
contributions.
Yeah.
And then a second resolution will come respecting the Union Bay request funded through the Heritage Conservation Service.
Is there a second? Or?
Still thinking. They want 15 overall.
Correct.
Of course, they got funding from other sources.
Yes, they are already receiving an operational grant through the General Admin Service to support the Food Policy Council. So we do try to avoid, funding organizations through multiple services if we can certainly avoid it. Yeah.
So am I setting a precedent?
Not necessarily.
I'll leave it as like this. I'm good. I'll second your motion.
All in favor? Carried.
Yeah, and then the other is would like that the contribution that was contemplated, so a move that the Union Bay Historical Society request be funded through the area A and B heritage functions. And we specified some amounts. I don't know if the staff caught that, but they're basically, I think, the exact same amounts that were in the grant and in the rural grant table.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, all three directors had indicated they wanted those equal amounts shifted
Yes.
over, so we'll certainly do that.
So do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried.
Great, thank you very much, directors.
All in favor? We'll wait. We're just motion. Okay.
I know Campbell River doesn't have it.
Okay, so if we move to, staff's going to give a presentation on growing community funds allocations.
Yeah, and again, thank you, directors. This report on the agenda is what was presented last week at the Electoral Area Services Committee. Kevin again is here to present a PowerPoint to try to bring the committee along to where we're at currently, and then we would be potentially looking for any subsequent recommendations that might come forward from the committee today. So Kevin.
Thanks to you again, James, through the chair to the directors. So on behalf of CFO Lucy Wicharik, who is unavailable today, I have a short presentation to walk through to continue the committee's discussions around the allocations of the Growing Communities Funds. As our acting CEO alluded to, with this, had been brought back from the previous meeting. And so we've just tried to bring back some of the additional information that you've requested in an effort to try to help support your allocation conversation. So firstly, just a bit of a review of where we were at in this process in trying to achieve the endorsement of these allocations. So as you may recall, we originally brought a report forward to you at the April 17th EASA meeting for discussion. There was also a report brought forward to the next day's board meeting, similarly just to kind of set the stage for what was being proposed. And then this report was brought back again at the May 8th EASC for further discussion. And then we're kind of at this place today where we're providing you this additional information. If you feel you're in a place where you're kind of able to move forward with this, we could then bring forward a report to the May 23rd board meeting to receive any EASC resolutions and to potentially finalize and endorse the allocations. Just a reminder again that there is not any imminence to this setting of allocations, but we do have to have these funds fully allocated prior to the end of this year by December 31st of 2023. So we've just tried to kind of provide a bit of a framework as to how the allocations are kind of structured. And this kind of goes to how the provincial formula kind of was determined for regional districts. So for regional districts, that allocation had four primary components. There was a flat amount of $500,000 that was set for each regional district. Then there was a per capita based on the total regional district population. So that's both electoral areas and municipalities. And then there was a multiplier set against that. There was also a calculation based on just the rural population as a standalone, and then there was a different multiplier assessed to that. So those result in those funding amounts indicated on the slide there. And then finally, there was a multiplier added to the rural population growth. So that's the change in rural population going back between the 2016 and 2021 federal census. So the total regional district population amount that you see there, the roughly 1.3 million, represents about 28% of the total grant funds that are have been provided to the CVRD, which total the 4.497 million. Given that these are based on that kind of total RD population, there can be suggestions that this be allocated to those more regional type services to support and to provide benefit to the full community. Further, there is no parameters currently specified with respect to the flat amount, the $500,000. A 1/3 portion of that could also potentially be allocated to regional services, and that would equate to about 160,000 of that 500. So as a result, if you look at it in this manner, that would leave 68% of the total funding available to go towards services specific to the rural or electoral areas, with a balance of about 32% of that amount available for more regional projects or initiatives. So some options, that the committee could consider today are recommend to the board some allocations to regional services, or certainly it's your prerogative to also not provide a recommendation and leave that for consideration by the entire board. Just as a reminder, the EASC did endorse the following 3 projects for contributions from the Growing Communities Fund back on May 8th. So those 3 projects totaled $2.645 million, and that was, of course, for the Denman Island Fire Hall replacement, which is slated currently for 2025. Also for the Mount Washington Fire Hall project, which is slated to begin in 2023, and so additional $600,000, and then finally the Union Bay Fire Hall replacement at $1.195. What that would result if we go back to allocating some dollars for regional, that would leave about $421,641 for any further rural or electoral area projects you may desire. $421,641. So just quickly on a couple of projects that had been proposed or put forward prior that are not currently within the approved financial plan. So the additional office space, we've just reiterated again that, the regional district does continue to have some significant office space pressures. And therefore, while this is still, kind of the estimate based on the most recent additional space built, we are still looking to kind of build some solutions into the process of how this will be determined. So again, it's just being presented as a potential option. Don't have a lot of flesh on those bones yet, but certainly an area that we have considered that, could benefit from some resources here. And then secondly, with respect to what was, deemed as part of the sewer conveyance project, the $600,000, really, as we alluded to at the last meeting, the real intent of this was, kind of to look at what potential community amenities could be kind of put in place as part of that overall large project that would provide, kind of some benefit to the Area B residents. Very much preliminary discussions at this point, and maybe at this point, we do have a potential project kind of in mind which would enhance some of the trail systems around that project. So maybe I'll ask Mark Rutten to come up and speak to that. We've provided some information on the following slide here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, through the CAO and through the chair. So this project we talked about last time, but we didn't have a really good description for the directors about what the plan was here. We talked about, the opportunity to maybe enhance some roadways to make them better for active transportation, to have, wider, better shoulders, paved shoulders, but we didn't have any, like Kevin said, we didn't have a lot of flesh on the bones here. So we've tried to flesh it out a little bit here. Still, we don't this is not something that we have a design for. It's not something that was planned for as part of the sewer conveyance project, but just, you know, recognizing a bit of an opportunity and piggybacking on a project that the Parks Department already has approved. So this diagram here shows in red a trail that ends at Butchers that would connect to kind of an existing trail network. So traffic would cycle or walk along Butchers, which is in orange, and then along another road. So I don't know the name of that road, connecting to a CVRD trail. What could enhance this project is installing the green line, which would connect from Butchers right through to Torrance. And so that's the opportunity that we were kind of trying to describe. So it's a little more fleshed out here. So 600 could be allocated to this project, could provide better connectivity, and it could be coordinated with the sewer conveyance project in terms of, you know, kind of the timing and scope of contractors in this area. So it's just an idea, and it's for your consideration. Thanks.
Daniel?
Yeah, thanks on that one. Seems to make sense to me. I've driven by there in a while, but that's where the hill is as well, right? As you approach towards Butchers. So would this be for kind of like, yeah, it's a bit hilly, but would this be for active transportation on both sides of the road with 600,000 and be just one side? And then second, I assume with the yellow line that it meets up with a right of way that then already connects, because otherwise if it's a dead end, obviously that's not going to work. So I just imagine that in that right of way there's already connectivity to that orange line from Torrance. So that'd be my two questions. Otherwise that seems to make sense to me for all the cyclists that commute between Area B and Comox and toward Cape Plateau. Like to have seems more intuitive to keep them on the main drag if it's made comfortable, if it's felt like those hills are not, because visibility is, we've had delegations on that in the past as well, and visibility for cars and for bikes, as long as we have some assurance that that would work on that front, I'm quite supportive.
So on the two questions there, so on whether it's on one side of the road or both sides, I'm sorry, I don't know. What we would do after this, if there's some support to pursue this further, we would start to incorporate it into the statement of requirements for conveyance and see what can be done. The second part, I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, Mark, I don't know if you know whether there's connectivity from the end of the orange line along Hawkins Road.
Through the chair to the directors. So the way that the Lazo pathway project is kind of envisioned, on the western side there would end at Butchers Road. That first part, that first leg of the yellow line, that's Butchers Road, so there is no path on it. And then it would turn to the west, which is down Walter Gage Road. And then it actually goes through what's called Summer Greenway, and that connects onto Hawkins Road. Now, Hawkins Road does have an extended shoulder on the one side to accommodate pedestrian traffic at this time.
I think Kevin's got a couple more slides here, and we can certainly come back to this project if there's more questions following the presentation.
Thank you, James. Yeah, just a couple more slides here. So at the last EASE, directors also had directed staff to inquire with our member municipalities as to the potential partnering of funds for any of these, proposed regional services or projects utilizing some of their growing communities funds. So staff did undertake that check-in with our municipal partners. the funds that the municipal partners currently have already been allocated to multiple municipal projects, and therefore we have received no indication, therefore, that the municipalities will be in a position to contribute their growing community fund allocations to a regional district or CBRD regional project. And then this lastly, some additional information on some of the parks and trail projects that I included for your consideration in the staff report. And I've tried to provide some additional information here, but certainly Mark Harrison, please chime in if needed. So these are all of the various trails and or related projects here. The Devon Island Trail, for example, that $25,000 is basically a dedicated portion or a subset of obviously a much larger, much multi-year project that I'm sure most of the directors can attest to. So that is a $25,000 contribution for that downtown trail construction. That is currently in the current financial plan and is currently being funded by a contribution from reserves. With respect to the Royston Greenway, what you see there, it represents the full estimated project costs, and that is for kind of the viewing platform asset management replacement of the old infrastructure. And that project is also slated in the financial plan to be currently funded by reserves. With respect to Goose Pit Trail and Seal Bay Parks, the total project costs here represent all the works within the current 2023 to 2027 financial plan. So, subsets within, kind of this current financial plan. And most of that is also, either slated for funding by reserves, or in the case of Seal Bay Park, we do have an allocation of community work funds that has already been previously approved. And then lastly, with respect to the Hornby Free Store covered breezeway, as obviously the name suggests, that is a new addition to the existing free store facility. It provides a more sheltered space for any drop-off items that get brought forward to the free store. So typically, kind of in the winter months, for example, if a stove or some type of appliance was dropped off, it was basically left out in the elements because they didn't really have anywhere to kind of put those, at least temporarily. So this would provide a bit of a covered space for that. We currently have this funded out of the operational budget for the Hornby Island Garbage Disposal Service. It's my understanding that breezeway has already been constructed and is actually now up and operational, but that was being funded by the operational budget, largely through the requisition that supports that service. So in summary, again, there's a couple of decision points the committee could make. We could allocate some funds to benefit the entire community through existing asset management for stuff that, really has to be done anyway. And that would include things like, fixing, roofs and keeping, you could alternatively also keep funds aside for any emergency priorities. As I've stated, there's not an imminent need to allocate these dollars today. However, we do have to allocate them in this fiscal year to make sure that we meet the auspices of the plan. And at the end of the day, we're trying to meet the needs of our growing community by ensuring there is a sufficient workspace for the capacity required now and future, which kind of goes back to that providing some office space potentially. And that's all I have for the presentation today, but certainly continue to be welcome any questions.
Daniel?
Yeah, thanks. There was 3 projects in Area A that were identified on page 8. And one question is we've already passed the budgets for a lot of these services that we're considering adding. So we're doing the requisition no matter what. So I imagine the saving would maybe be represented in next year's budget because we're going to requisition anyways, unless we add further budget amendments for further things. So for the breezeway, it's already built and all the rest of it. So I don't see that one as kind of done with, so to speak. So to backfill it, I don't see a huge need for that, especially since the requisition's gone in. The other 2, though, I'm very much in favor of the Diamond Island construction downtown. That's been a request through the Islands Trust as well. It's a project that's not done yet and be great to connect it to towards the stairway from the ferry and then connect with the rest. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the community. I don't think that 25,000 I'd be curious to know if that's going to do the whole project. I'd be very surprised, or if it's just a contribution towards it. And then the Royston, I think and again, that's the question. I'm glad that Mark is here, because so on the Denman one, I'd like a little more information. And then for Royston, you know, I hear a lot of parents asking about, sadly, you know, what we started in Fanny Bay is spreading like wildfire, right? They got their playground 3 years ago. Now we're working towards one in Union Bay, and now Royston parents tell me that they would love to see, or ask the question whether we could see a playground along the seashore on the Royston Seaside Trail. And I have a question whether we need to replace that viewing platform. It seems like everywhere along that way has a great view. So I'm just wondering what the rationale is behind that. And I realize it's gone through our budget cycles and all the rest of it, but we haven't taken a deep dive, because usually during budget, everything comes fast and furious. So if the directors don't mind, I'd love for a little more information from staff on those two things.
Yeah, through the chair to the directors. So in terms of the Denman Cross Island Trail, just to clarify that, 25,000 was there to construct the trail within the downtown core only, and then the connection to the staircase would just be via the road. So we wouldn't be building any more trail there.
But 25 well covered, basically from the arts center to towards the hall.
From the grocery store building kind of north towards the school. I'm not exactly sure of the distance there.
Yeah,
So
I love it. I love it. If we can do this for 25,000, I'm all in. That's great.
yeah, that's what I've been told is all we really need there. So and then in terms of what's the next one, the Royston Seaside Trail. So that was put in there because it was built that viewing area was built in, I think, in 2003. So now we're kind of at the end of its useful life, 2023. We are going to plan to do an engineered inspection on that viewing platform to really get a better idea of whether it's really at its end of its life or not. So that 70,000 was really a placeholder in terms of, and we hadn't really figured out yet whether we were going to replace that or tear it down, or what we were going to do. And we were going to base that on what was happening with the inspection report. So as it is right now, it was just in there as a placeholder for, I believe it was next year, right? 2024, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I don't see a need to allocate the funds towards that. I realize I might lose the funds altogether. I'd love to do it, temporary hold off, but yeah, I'd like to go. Maybe I haven't been there in a while, so I might go and check it out again. And yeah, I don't feel like I'd want to commit that today. It's right on the seashore. As I said, everything's got a great view, and also the question of how long, how much more life. I would want to commit it until at least we see your report, you know, whether, and I realize I might risk the full amount there to the benefit of others, but that's fine. I don't want to make that allocation today.
Yeah, and if I may, so just want to reiterate that again, certainly with respect to the Royston Greenway and the Denman Island Trail, these are already approved projects within the current 5-year financial plan. Really, you know, kind of the goal, as our CFO had noted previously, is we had taken a look at a lot of the projects that are in the 5-year plan and say, where would it potentially make sense to shift some dollars, you know, from the Growing Communities Fund that would then enable us to keep some resources in those reserves? Certainly with respect to the Denman Parks and Greenway service, I mean, that is a relatively small service that is challenged with respect to the amount that currently are sitting in reserve. So this would certainly be an opportunity to retain those dollars in reserves and have it funded by another means. Same with Royston. I mean, obviously that's being funded out of the larger EA Parks and Trail Service, which is as challenged with reserves. But again, just given the number of anticipated asset replacement renewal projects over the next several years, obviously, if we can keep dollars in reserves and kind of earmark for that work, you know, so much the better, specifically given we do have, you know, some resources that we can kind of use to supplement that. And with respect to the free store, yes, I mean, it's currently funded out of requisition. Currently, has been constructed. If that was to be funded, then those dollars would just stay in the service, probably go into the reserve and help supplement, again, a relatively small service that, doesn't have a lot of capacity.
Edwin, did you have any comments?
Thanks, and thanks, Kevin, for making it all so plain and simple. It seems like we have, $4.5 million. And this is like an unexpected inheritance, from your Uncle Louis in Saskatoon or something you didn't know. But again, I'm thinking of, where it would be best spent. And it's, I do realize that about a third of it has to be spent on regional initiatives. But we have 5 years to spend this. And I always say you don't know what's coming around the corner. I mean, we got some situations like the Glid situation on the water service over in Denman. I mean, a chunk of money could probably really help solve that problem, rather than building parking lots. I just have an issue with that. I think it should be, the real, like you're talking about, in-ground stuff, the fire services, all that kind of stuff. It should be, in my mind, it should all go as much as possible to where the need is the greatest, in real tangible infrastructure stuff. So, I have a problem with it. I really do. It doesn't seem like we have to rush into this too much. We do have a little bit of breather room. So I don't know. I mean, what am I getting? It's 600,000 for the fire hall, right? Yeah. So that's area C, 13% of the total. Area B is getting not even 5% of the total. So it really isn't territorial. Like I say, I don't mind putting it where it's going to do the most good, where the need is the greatest. So, I mean, that's where I have an issue with, nice to haves and need to haves. So I'll just wait for the discussion and see where this takes us. I'm grateful for the extra money for the fire hall up in Mount Washington, because as you probably know, the location we had picked out is not suitable and it's going to be overrun in price. We do have a very small community up there, and it's quite I can't remember the tax requisitions, but $1.20 on the thou or something. It's up there, so but I don't know. What does the chair think?
Yeah, thanks. So I guess we've had this conversation a few different times with regards to the regional rec center replacement of infrastructure on roofs that everybody in the whole entire Comox Valley utilizes. So I think everybody should contribute to it. It shouldn't be just the CVRD or pockets of money that could be directed towards rural projects, but have to get diverted back to recreational facilities. So I'm still struggling with that one. The sewer conveyance one, I'd still like to wait a little bit longer and see designs and figure out how those dollars towards the sewer conveyance are going to get directed or spent. And then the additional office space, again, is something that I think everybody should be contributing to. But that's just my thoughts and opinions. I really do think it's important that we get dollars directed towards our fire halls. That to me is, I think we're all share the same opinion on that one, I would think, with regards to let's get those dollars directed towards the fire halls ASAP. Edwin, I really your comment with regards to the water infrastructure on Demond is something that I didn't really give it a lot of thought about until just now when you brought that forward with regards to those costs. So again, with regards to, do we put in a nice fancy parking lot at Seal Bay Park, or do we direct it towards some infrastructure that's going to help some folks out over on Demon Island? You know, that's something to take into consideration here as well. And I know we've had some conversations with regards to the Grand Lake infrastructure, but do we, I know it was suggested last week by Daniel in regards to perhaps we could have an Electoral Area Service Committee meeting over on Demon in June when there are going to be conversations revolving around that particular item. So maybe we can have a discussion about that, you know, towards the end of the meeting with regards to whether we move forward on that suggestion. I think it's a good idea to go over. I had suggested when we had delegates come that I didn't mind going over to visit Demon Island, check out the water infrastructure over there and listen to folks' concerns over there. So I don't know if I've been helpful or not, or if I've just thrown up a few more sticks in the spokes, so to speak. But like I said, I think the major items with regards to the fire halls, I think we need to move quickly and forward on that one. James, yeah, additional comment? Thanks.
Sure, I can just try a little bit. And Kevin, I'll make a couple of comments, but then I might be ask you just to speak to the timing. I heard some the interest in that, whether we have 5 years to spend the money or not. So if you could follow up with that in a second. But currently the EASC has approved 2.645 million through the fire halls. That was last week's recommendation from the EASC. And if you look at the 4.5 million that has been given to the CBRD for the Growing Communities Fund, roughly 1/3 of it is really geared towards those regional type initiatives and regional services. That's based on the formula with the regional population figures, and then a portion of the flat fee, which would leave 2/3 or about 3 million for rural area projects, again, based on the formula. So the committee having approved just over 2.6 million last week, that's approaching the 3 million that would be earmarked for the rural services. Kevin's identified a few others here that could be added to that rural services and rural programs list. And then that would leave the 1/3 or the 1.5 million or so that is really meant for the regional projects, and that could be the rec complexes as one such project. The board, I think it was on April 24th, I believe it was, when a similar staff report came to the board. There was some feedback from the board at that time. The board may still be interested in understanding the regional projects and services that the regional portion of these funds might go to. So as Kevin started off, this committee may want to consider some recommendations for rural projects. And then you may want to recommend to the board some of the regional projects, or you may want to have that discussion at the board about what those projects might be. So I don't know if I added any clarity to that, Mr. Chair, but
and I can respond to some of the questions that came out of that as well. So yes, I mean, it is correct that upon receipt of the funds, we do have 5 years to fully expend them. So that's, you know, when they have to be kind of fully spent. But yes, we are required to at least allocate them by the end of this year, just to make sure that we do have specific projects or initiatives identified that those will be applied to.
Edwin?
Well, I just wish we had a an electoral area cabinet minister in Victoria that is strictly focused on electoral areas and how it works and whatever. So like I say, I mean, the municipalities never have any trouble spending our money, and we don't get any of theirs. But perhaps what we should do is, because we've already agreed on the fire halls, office space, and the roof of the rec might be something we could allocate right now, and then just keep our powder dry on the other pieces until we, see how it all falls down, and we have to commit it by the end of the year. So it gives us a bit of time. And like I say, you don't know what's going to pop up. So when we get past receipt, I would like to make a motion to that effect, if it be supported at this committee.
Daniel?
Yeah, thanks. I was expecting a different comment there, so that throws me off a bit, but because what I was gonna say is, if the third of the funds is for regional participation, and there is no rush until December 31st, I don't understand why the areas necessarily would determine what the regional priority is. And I know we're heading into a 2-day strategic session at the Fuller board in June, which I actually don't know why we're going in a strategic session in June. It feels like we've done a lot of strategic planning the last 6 months. But we are, and there's 2 days allocated. And maybe prior to making that allocation, we could run by the broader board at that point to say, hey, we're considering these allocations to new office space and what's the other one, the roof. And what do you guys think? And it might be a good conversation to have to see where the priorities lie. If it is that third is really a regional allocation, it's funny that the 3 EAs are being asked to look after what's the regional interest at this time. So just a thought on that one that just occurred to me today. Yeah, there's no and I agree with Dr. Grieve. Like, I think, we let go of the fire hall ones. We're really happy about it. We can see clarity around those allocations. But if there's no rush to December, I do agree that if it doesn't feel right today to do it, then let's kick it, and we'll have more time to think about it. And new demands or new problems may arise over the next 6 months, as Dr. Grieve said, that we don't anticipate. So I would I definitely want to move forward with the Denman Island one for 25,000. That's a good project if it's supported, but otherwise I would just be happy to leave the other allocations alone.
To the chair, to Director Arbor, the Denman Island Trail one, is that what you're talking about? That wasn't a lot of money, was it?
Yeah, 25,000.
How much?
25,000.
$25.
25,000.
What's a million here and a million there? Well, we could always put that one through if that be good. Yeah, because so let's vote on receipt, and you can make the motion to hold our fire on the rest of it till after strategic planning and get the Devon Trail going.
So not seeing any more questions, then we're going to vote on receipt.
I could actually just weigh in one more
Go ahead,
more
James.
time. Two things to Director Arbor, mostly the original staff report that came to the Electoral Area Service Committee. It also went to the board the following day. If you'll recall, it was a very similar staff report, and it's because of the nature of this funding. It's unique. We don't usually see grants like this, and it has that regional formula in it. So right from the beginning, it was intended that both the board and the EASC would have some influence and some input on that. So it is a unique grant program in that sense. And that's why we're also identifying that the board itself may have some interest specifically around that 1/3 of the funding. On the strategic planning, the 2-day session in June, A lot of that's building from the January sessions that we had, and a big focus for the strategic planning is going to be around housing. The board's identified interest in housing and what role can the regional district take with regard to housing. I would be hesitant to include the Growing Communities Fund as a big piece of the strategic planning, because already there's a good couple of days of work around your core services, your drivers, and housing as that component that the board's expressed interest in. So I would just want to give some thought to how much time the Growing Communities Fund would take at the strategic planning session. And because those allocations are not needed until the end of 2023, then it may be something that we can come back later on with a bit more information around if needed.
Director Harbour?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, not bad thoughts. I might have just slightly different tack on it in regards to if the session is going to be focused around housing, which is good. I mean, a lot of the Growing Communities Fund, as we discussed before, is focused around solving some housing pieces. And as we discussed, I think Lucy did a really good job of talking about how infrastructure underpins housing and other services. But at the same time, it's not direct housing. So like, I'll give you an example. Say that we brought these funds. It doesn't need to take 2 hours, but say that out of that session, the board identifies that what we did in 2011 was the right thing. That's when the CVRD bought 2 parcels of property under the emergency shelter, right? So now you're talking about a CVRD owned asset, which qualifies. So if the recommendation is that CVRD gets some land to put, say, like they're doing Duncan or Port Alberni or something like that, like temporary home structures or container homes, say the board landed on that, wouldn't it be nice at the end of that session to say, hey, by the way, we have $1.5 million that could potentially go to the purchase of that land coming out of the Growing Communities Fund. I'm just theorizing, but we won't know until we get there. So I'm not saying do a session on growing communities, but it might be interesting to see what kind of things come out of that meeting, to see if the CVRD could contemplate things that like we've done in the past. I realize that project kind of, from what I hear, really exploded at the time, but it doesn't mean that, you know, sometime in second round, if everybody's on board, you could end up with a good contribution proposal for some of these funds. Does that make sense, James, or do you see that as not necessarily aligned with what's in mind for the strategic session?
I think that there's you know, the scenario you played there, it might be that the Growing Communities Fund might be a means to that outcome. If the strategic planning identifies some sort of activities or tasks or role for the CVRD, then it may be that there's funding opportunity from the Growing Communities Fund or requisition or any other community works or any other funding source. And so there's some alignment there, certainly.
So do we have a vote on receipt? All in favor? Carried.
What Dr. Greaves said, what did you say?
Well, I'll make that motion. Move the Denman Island Trail funds and leave the rest for future consideration, pending more discussion with our municipal partners.
And that was in regards to the recreation, the sewer conveyance and the additional office space. Is that right? You're good with all the other items? Just
Yeah.
wanting to make sure we're all okay.
Acting CEO.
Just to be clear, there's a number of parks and trails items, and is the committee wanting to support Denman Island Cross Trail, Goose Pit Trail, Royston Greenway, Seal Bay Nature Park, or just the Denman Island Cross Trail?
Myself, I was good with everything other than the 3 items that we talked about with regards to the recreation facilities, the sewer conveyance, and the additional office space right now, which equated to just over 1.4 million, right? Sorry, just over 1.5.
Correct, yeah. So would the committee be supporting the 4 different trail projects? Denman Island Cross Trail, Goose Pit Trail, Royston Greenway Viewing Stand Replacement, and Seal Bay Nature Park, as described in the staff report?
I'm comfortable with those.
So it would only be the Denman Island Cross Trail, the Goose Pit Trail, and the Seal Bay Nature Park, as described in the staff report?
So moved.
All in favor? Carried. Did we get that? Great, Lisa? Should we let Kevin contribute?
All 3 orders of government will be represented.
There you go. So I just want to be clear, what we would be bidding forward to the board on May the 23rd then, because we haven't formally brought forward the 3 fire hall projects yet either. So in addition to those 3 fire hall projects, also the parks projects outlined here. Thank you.
So we're all good? We're all on the same page? Excellent.
Let's move 3 for receipt.
All right. Over to Kevin.
Thank you once again, through the chair to the director. So yes, this is the report that was originally brought forward to you back in April. And then, of course, it was deferred to the following Electoral Area Services Committee back on May 8th. And then unfortunately, due to lack of time, it's been brought forward again today. So staff doesn't really have anything new to present, but perhaps to reiterate that, post the adoption of the 23-27 financial plan, we have started to allocate a significant portion of the remaining unallocated funds with the community works funds. So staff are continuing to recommend that some items that could benefit from some contributions as outlined in the report that was brought forward as part of your package today would be the Union Bay Fire Hall replacement project. And that's largely to help alleviate as much of the anticipated debt service and costs as possible. So with the allocation from the Growing Communities Fund, this would provide further $1.1 million towards that $3 million project. So that would go a long way to making it a lot more affordable, certainly for the residents in that area. We had also proposed the 2 small contributions to the 2 smaller sewer systems, the Jackson Drive and King Coho sewer systems. Those projects are being funded by reserves currently. So what this would allow is to enable those, quite small reserves. And of course, both of those were private systems that were inherited or taken over by the regional district. So certainly we're challenged with not having a lot of dollars in reserve. So any reserve dollars we can keep in hand, the better off we are. So if you so chose, we could allocate those the 65,000 to Jackson Drive and the 60,000 to King Coho accordingly. And then the last item, of course, was the sewer services South Extension project. Again, a project that we know is certainly going to be, needing some additional support to get us across the finish line. So we have proposed an allocation there to then complete full allocation of the current community work funds available. Of course, this current agreement is in its final year, is due to be complete by March 31st of 2024. So as I've noted earlier, we are anticipating word as to the deliberations with respect to a new multi-year agreement. But at this point, we're just kind of waiting to see how that's going to kind of flow out.
Edmund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Kevin. On the South Sewer extension, the initial project, Area C committed $1 million of its community works. Now, I know I keep asking this question. Maybe I'm just thick. Well, I know I'm pretty thick, got a thick head anyway. So did any of that money, was it ever returned to Area C? Because I know that 500 was pretty well the price we paid for the plan when it dead ended. And there was about another 5 left over. So is that still in the kitty?
Through the chair to Director Graves. So yeah, my understanding is those funds were allocated through the community works funds. Some of those funds were expended. What I would anticipate is, because we have yet to formally establish a service to support the extension of the sewer services south. But if we were to get to that point, which is, potentially looking much closer on the horizon than it has in past, once that service was formally established, then what staff would do is take a look at all of the community works funds that were expended to support getting us to that place, and then look at what would then have to be repaid back to from whence it came.
Well,
Because that's
maybe or
Potential.
used for the project, but it'd be nice for the people of Area C to get the credit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the case of feasibility, sorry, I want to preface that, is any dollars within feasibility that were allocated to support that.
So that's
they
where it's
came out
sitting
of
now, is the
feasibility.
feasibility.
Any community works fund contributions, those have no repayment requirement attached.
Yeah.
So if one or more of the areas had contributed dollars to that, those dollars were deemed allocated to that and would be spent. Or if they remained unspent, they would just get decommitted and put back into the community work fund pool.
So in layman's terms, being that it's unallocated right now, it's sitting in what function is that money sitting in?
So right now, these funds sit in a specialized reserve for the community works funds. They haven't been, the unallocated portions that remain left haven't been allocated out to any specific service. They just continue to sit in that reserve.
So then they're making 5.25% every year, right?
And Kevin, can you confirm that the any community works funds that are being spent towards the South project are happening through the Liquid Waste Management Planning Service, function 340?
They are happening through a combination of the feasibility study services and service 340, our liquid waste management planning service. Correct.
Thanks.
Sorry, but I just had to raise that flag one more time. Thank you.
Director Harbour? Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Community Works approaching the end, and hopefully the renewal and hopefully the doubling. We're advocating strongly in Ottawa for the doubling of these funds, but our timing might actually be pretty good. We're heading into a federal election in a year or two. The Liberals really like working with FCM, so we're not going to let up. I think up there, and obviously we're asking for a 10-year agreement again, which really helped, I think, local communities the last 10 years. Very much in support of the Union Bay Fire Hall allocation and the other ones as well. I think they're all in core services, all the rest of that. I do have, I don't know if today's the day to do it, but I've got an issue in that, and it's just specific within Hornby and Denman, in that between Growing Communities Fund and Community Works Fund, like there's currently like almost $1 million going to Denman and zero to Hornby, and there's some demands on Hornby that I think could be met by Community Works. And so for the chair, so like the pots, they're divided between Area A, and then Hornby and Denman are a little kitty together. But what I was looking at, and I think I touched base just really briefly last month or a couple of weeks back with James on that, but we're currently making a pretty good allocation for the Denman Fire Hall with the growing communities. But, and I don't know if we can bring Doug to the mic, but one project that's kind of been orphaned a little bit is the boat ramp project on Hornby, which is really key for emergency. So I was thinking whether that 300 grand could be, like 2 months ago during the budget process, but before we got growing communities, we allocated 300,000 of community works for the fire hall. So I was thinking on Denman. So I was thinking of taking that money and seeing if Hornby can get something out of all these things that are happening right now, and whether a contribution like that towards fixing the boat ramp could take us, a long way. So that's a question for now. I don't want to make motions today on that, but more information from staff. I don't know if we can have more information on that.
Sure, Doug, if you've got any further background on that. And not to complicate things, but I'm not sure if there's any value in casting our minds back too as well in time for other contributions that have come through Community Works for other projects, just to consider that balance over the longer time frame. But Doug, if you had anything to add on the particular question on the boat ramp.
I think the boat ramp's pretty much at a point where it's gonna probably need a full rebuild. So if there was money put aside to help us partner in other grants, that might be possible. But that being said, we haven't been very successful with grants for that project. So where it may come to fruition is in conversations in the future of BC Ferries, and knowing that we're a willing partner and bringing some money to the table, they may see a benefit there to have that boat ramp as well for their upgrades. So saying it is possible, I don't think it needs to be an immediate decision, but it's something we could consider.
Yeah, thanks. That's actually information I was hoping for. Like, we had 2 grant applications to the province to the boat ramp in the last 3 years, and they were both declined. And that's, to me, that's a core service to the community where it's pretty remote island, and that boat ramp is almost unusable now. It's people still use it. I used it last year to put in my boat, but it's not very good. I forget the total budget, but so again, I'm prepared to park that for today, but maybe if we could have a little report back on the boat ramp and what 300,000 could come at a future ESC, then maybe I would ask to the commission portion for the Denman Fire Hall and put it towards that as, acknowledgement that there's a need there.
So vote on receipt. All in favor? Carry. Yeah, let's have a look. Any other new business? Oh, sorry.
Are we gonna move the recommendation as presented then? It's second is on the table.
Yeah, if the other directors are fine, I think those I'm comfortable with those allocations. And then for my other thing, I would just bring it at a future meeting. So I'd be prepared to move it.
So when it comes to the Community Works grants, when do we get our grants from the feds? Does it come through in the fall, or just wondering when the next tranche is coming through?
Through the chair to Director Grieve. I mean, yeah, we typically have received 2 kind of annual installments for those funds. So I'd certainly have to check with our finance staff to see when this next one is due. I believe we might have received already a portion of it, but essentially we would receive all of the remaining funds at least prior to the fall. And then that would represent the full allotment within this current 10-year agreement that obviously goes back to 2014.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that then, because there might actually be some major development happening up in the Northland.
So vote on recommendation. All in favor? Carry. Thank you. Director Arbor, on the new business.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the latitude. Yeah, I would just ask if staff at the next ESC could bring a refresher on the boat ramp project and kind of I can't fully remember the financial requirements for the project, but just a brief update report to put on the agenda, and that would allow us to consider whether a contribution would be useful or not.
Yeah, we'll aim for that. I don't want to commit to the two gentlemen that will be helping draft that, but we'll aim for a EASC meeting shortly. All in favor? Carry.